en Walt Disney World Resort, tu familia te sorprende, como tu papá cuando lo ves riendo y gritando en Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Encuentra ese momento de pura magia en Walt Disney World Resort. Visita disneyworld.com.
Catch the NBA playoffs on Sling TV, the most flexible live TV streaming service, putting consumers in control to watch games their way with flexible subscriptions. Want to catch one game or a full series on ESPN? Grab a 1, 3, or 7-day pass. If you want to catch as many games as possible, get a monthly subscription with our ABC, NBC, and ESPN combo package. Either way, Sling lets you watch the playoffs your way with no long-term contracts. Learn more at sling.com.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson. Now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. As we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by a good friend of ours, Jovan Alford. He does great work over at Total Sports Live, along with Fansided. We're going to chat with him about the almighty struggles that we're seeing with the Mets and the Phillies. He's based out there in Philadelphia, so we're going to look at both of those teams as both are in action on this Thursday, as well as we're going to be taking a look at the card in general that we've got for this Thursday. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every Thursday game as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, there's the M, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we did have ourselves a fun day of baseball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and ding dong, the witch is dead. The Mets finally got a win. Look back at that and try to be able to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
3-2, the Mets, their 12-game losing streak. Finally, and I mean finally, it is all over. As for the Mets, it did not come easy in this one, but hey, the bullpen pitching, it was there for them as Brooks Raley along with Luke Weaver combined for 2 scoreless innings. Clay Holmes, 2 runs allowed in 7 innings, did give up home run to Byron Buxton, 5th home run of the campaign, and it was a little bit of a piggyback approach here for the Twins. Connor Prelip, he makes his MLB debut, gives up 2 runs in 4 innings, and then Kendrys Rojas comes in for 2 scoreless innings. Eric Gorze a scoreless inning, and then Taylor Rogers gives up a run in the 8th inning as being able to drive that in. Mark Vientos and Justin Topa and out of the bullpen scoreless. So congratulations, the Mets. They will not lose them all. Neither will the Milwaukee Brewers, but they did lose on this day. 5-2, they fall to the Detroit Tigers. As for Chad Patrick, was not great. It's a bulk guy, 4 runs allowed in 4 innings. He does give up a home run as well as taking him deep. Spencer Torkelson, first home run of the campaign. Gary Carpenter, he gets his 8th home run of the season. That comes off of Carlos Rodriguez, who gives up that solo home run in 2 innings of work. D. Alternate Hall, 2 scoreless innings. And Casey Mize, 1 run allowed in 6 innings. Kyle Finnegan, Will Vest, Kenley Jansen, they alternate a scoreless inning. For the Arizona Diamondbacks, in a high-scoring affair, they do persevere, get the job done against the Chicago White Sox, 11-7. For the White Sox, Anthony Kay was anything but okay. 8 runs allowed in 3 2/3 innings, including a pair of bombs. Going deep for the Arizona Diamondbacks, Nolan Arenado, his 4th home run of the campaign. That won't actually come off of Lucas Sims, who gave up 2 runs over the course of his inning of work, as Ilyarmar Vargas had both off of Mr. K, his 4th and 5th home runs of the campaign. 5 RBI for him in this one. Jordan Hicks from there gives you an out of the bullpen scoreless. Brian Hudson, 8 scoreless inning. Sean Newcomb in 2 innings. He allows a run, and Eduardo Rodriguez did experience some regression here. 4 runs allowed over the course of 5 innings as he was taken deep twice himself, as Miguel Vargas, his 5th home run of the campaign. And then Colson Montgomery get his 7th home run of the season. And then a little bit later on, Taylor Clark, he gives up a run in inning. Juan Murillo along with Paul Sewald, they both give you a scoreless inning. And Ryan Thompson, he gives up 2 runs over the course of his inning. And another home run from Mutaka Murakami, his 10th home run of the campaign. So he's been hot, but a guy who's been even hotter with the deep ball, Yordan Alvarez, as the Houston Astros, they find a way to persevere 2-0 over the Cleveland Guardians. He goes deep in the first inning off of Tanner Bybee, his 11th home run of the campaign, and that would be all the scoring in this game. Peter Lambert, he's able to throw 6 shutout innings against the Guardians. From there, AJ Blubaugh scoreless innings, Steven Okert, Anya de los Santos, they combine for 2 scoreless innings, and Bybee gives up the home run, but he was solid, 2 runs allowed in 6 innings. Matt Festa, Hunter Gaddis, Eric Sobrowski, they all led to scoreless inning, but nothing nothing doing for the Guardians at the plate. For the LA Angels, a lot doing for Jose Soriano. 7-3, the Angels get the job done. Soriano, he does give up 7 hits, but 5 shutout innings out of him. He now has a 0.24 ERA, I believe the first pitcher in history to give up 1 run or fewer in each out of his first 5 or first 6 starts. He's been incredible. Ryan Zephyrian from there, 2 runs allowed in 1 1/3 innings. Chase Silseth, he gives up a run in 2/3 of an inning. Brent Suter, Jordan Romano, they both give you a scoreless inning. And Eric Lauer, 3 runs allowed over the course of 5 innings. From there, Tommy Nance gives up 2 runs in 1 1/3 innings. Braden Fisher, 2 runs allowed in 1/3 of an inning. And Joe Mantiply was able to give you 4 outs out of the bullpen scoreless, but by then the damage had been done. For the Baltimore Orioles, 8-6, they're able to take down the Kansas City Royals as the Royals give up a 6th spot in the 6th inning. Not great there as Michael Wacha, it was more like Michael Waka 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 Waka. Dying Pac-Man voice as he gave up 6 runs in 5 1/3 innings. Home run to Pete Alonso, his 3rd home run of the campaign. Then a little bit later on, Eli Morgan, he gives one up to Kobe Mayo, his 2nd home run of the campaign. Morgan gives up 2 runs in 1 2/3 innings. Alex Lang, Mason Black, they both give you a scoreless inning, and Chris Bassett was taking hook, line, and sinker in this game. 5 runs allowed in 5 1/3 innings as going deep. Vinny Pescantino, 3rd home run of the campaign. Carter Jensen, who's been good since the oversleep situation, 6th home run of the season. Kyle Isbell a little bit later on off of Junior Cano. Don't you know he got his 3rd home run of the season. Cano gives up that sole home run in his inning of work. Tyler Wells, though, he pitched Wells, 5 outside the bullpen scoreless, and you had Anthony Nunez be able to supply a scoreless inning. For the Atlanta Braves, they get to the Washington Nationals for an 8-6 win. For DDA Fuentes, he makes the little bit of surprise start here, gives up 4 runs over the course of 3 innings, including a home run. He was taken deep by Dallin Lyle, 3rd home run of the season. Then James Wood, some good wood off of Martin Perez, who piggybacked from there. He gives up 2 runs over the course of 3 innings, including that home run, Wood's 9th in the season. And Joey Weimer would also take him deep for home run number 3 of the season. But Dylan Lee, Tyler Kinley, Robert Suarez, all on the scoreless inning, and Zach Littell got destroyed. 8 runs, 6 of which were earned. They had him fill 6 innings in this one. Matt Olson, 7th home run of the season. You had Michael Harris get his 5th and 6th home runs of the season. Brooks Baldwin, his 7th, and then Mitchell Parker, 2 scoreless innings. You also had a scoreless inning in this one as well from Julian Fernandez, but giving up 8 runs, 6 of which were earned. Damage by then that had been very much done. And for the Seattle Mariners, they do some damage to the Athletics. 5-4, they get the job done here. Logan Gilbert gives up 3 runs over the course of 4 innings, and his jersey caught a baseball. I'm not even kidding. You look back at the replay, that was ridiculous. Jose Ferrer, 2 scoreless innings. Matt Brash, Cooper Criswell, they both on to scoreless inning. Andres Munoz does give up a solo home run in his inning of work. He has been shaky as Nick Ertz taking some deep, 4th home run of the campaign, but the Mariners still get the job done because they got to Aaron Savali. 3 runs allowed in 5 1/3 innings, including a home run to Big Dumper Cal Raleigh. 5th home run of the season. He's gotten hot here recently, and then you had Mark Leiter Jr. be able to come in for an inning, gives up a run. Justin Sterner, scoreless inning. Brady Basso, he was able to give you a pair of outs out of the bullpen scoreless, but Joel Kuhnel gives up the RBI hit as Josh Naylor has had a not so great start to the season. RBI single in the 9th inning to be able to get the job done out there. For the Miami Marlins, they get the job done. 4-1. They take down the St. Louis Cardinals. For the Cards, Kyle Leahy, not what he was looking for. 4 runs allowed over the course of 5 innings. From there, Gordon Gassefo, Matt Savanson, Ryan Fernandez, all end a scoreless inning, and anything but junk for Jansen junk. 5 scoreless innings. Andrew Nardi, Anthony Bender, Michael Peterson, great name, all end a scoreless inning. Lake Bakar gives up a home run in the 9th inning. Davon Herrera, 3rd home run of the campaign. Pete Fairbanks cleans up the Mets, pair of outs out of the bullpen to be able to get the save and be able to get that one in. Being able to get this one in, 6-1. The Tampa Bay Rays, they get it done over the Cincinnati Reds as Cincinnati was on to having Brandon Williamson give up 5 runs over the course of 4 1/3 innings. He allows a home run to Junior Caminero, 6th home run of the campaign. From there, Connor Phillips, 1 run allowed in 2 innings. Tony Santin, pair of outs out of the bullpen scoreless. Brock and Roll Burkett, scoreless inning. Nick Martinez against his old team, very good here. 1 run allowed over the course of 8 innings. Kevin Kelly from there, scoreless inning to be able to get that one in. After you had a 1-0 game out there at Coors Field on Tuesday. Don't see that very often. Rockies got a little bit more offense here. 8-3. They take down the Slam Diego Padres as Walker Buehler, 4 runs allowed in 2 2/3 innings. Bullpen from there, a little bit shaky. Wandy Peralta, 1 run allowed in 1 2/3 innings as he gives up a home run to Hunter Goodman, 6th home run of the campaign. David Morgan, 2 runs allowed in 1 1/3 innings. Kyle Hart, he comes in for 2 1/3 innings. He allows a run. Tomoyuki Sugano continues his relatively start to the season. 1 run allowed in 5 2/3 innings. From there, there, Jaden Hill, he does give up a home run to Luis Campusano. Second home run in the campaign, gives up a home run in 1 1/3 innings. Antonio Senzatella has been really good out of the bullpen. One unearned run given up in 2 innings to be able to get that one in. The Phillies continue to lose. I believe that's now 8 straight for them. 7-2. The Cubs get the job done. Why Taijuan Walker is still pitching for the team, I have no idea. They tried an opener with Kyle Backus. He gives up a run in an inning. Walker gives up 5 runs, 4 of which were earned in 4 innings, including a pair of bombs. Michael Busch, who's been terrible. First home run of the campaign. Say Suzuki, oh, I see you with your second home run of the season. From there, 3 innings and 1 run allowed by Alan Rangel, so he was able to do relatively solid. And for Matthew Boyd, he goes 4 2/3 innings, fresh off the injured list, gives up 2 runs. Ben Brown from there, 2 1/3 innings scoreless, and then a scoreless inning out of Hobie Milner along Corbin Martin to be able to get that one in. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they get this one in by kind of 8-4 over the Walker Texas Rangers. This game was 4-4 going into the 9th inning, and then the Rangers upchuck defeat from the jaws of victory as Jack Leiter gives up 4 runs, 3 of which were earned in his 5 innings. Tyler Alexander, 2 scoreless innings. Grant Collier, a scoreless inning, and then Goldwyn, 3 runs allowed in a third of an inning. Jalen Beeks, he comes in with inherited runners and gives up a home run to Oniel Cruz. 7th home run of the campaign, he's on the hook for 1 run in 2/3 inning. Braxton Ashcraft, not a load of Ashcraft, 2 runs allowed in 7 innings, and Josh Young took him deep, 3rd home run of the campaign. Gregory Soto from there, well, not great, 2 runs allowed in his inning of work, but Dennis Santana, a scoreless inning to be able to get that one in. And for the New York Yankees, they do get a 4-1 win over the Boston Red Sox. For the Yankees, 3 runs in the first inning, not a lot after that, but didn't need it. Mad Max Fried, 8 innings of shutout baseball. From there, Brent Hendrick gives up a run in an inning, and Ranger Suarez, 4 runs allowed in 4 2/3 innings. Ahmed Rosario, 4th home run of the campaign. Zach Kelly, he comes in for a scoreless inning, and how about 3 1/3 innings from Eduardo Rivera? He was solid. He was able to go scoreless there, and then to wrap up the night, the San Francisco Giants, they get a 3-0 win over the LA Dodgers. For Los Angeles, just nothing doing off of Tyler Mahle. 7 scoreless innings. Caleb Killian, Ryan Walker from there, led a scoreless inning. Shohei Ohtani was great. 6 scoreless innings. He didn't get any hits at the plate, but he was great on the mound. From there, Jack Dreyer, he gives up 3 runs in his inning as it was Patrick Bailey getting his first home run of the campaign. From there, you had Kyle Hurt give you a scoreless inning, but absolutely nothing doing here for the LA Dodgers. If you're taking a look at what we're getting trend-wise in baseball right now, it has been a little bit of an overwhelming season. Over the last 7 days, we have seen the over hit at approximately a 50-50 clip, 47 overs, 47 unders, and 0 pushes along the way. Favorites in this time span starting to get online. 53 and 41 on the money line, 56.4%, but if you look at the entirety of the season, favorites are hitting at just 54.8%, 198 and 163 on the money line, with 32 of those favorites not covering the run line. The over rate, 53.2%. 191 overs, 168 unders. That's what we're seeing in baseball right now, and that's what we're all getting trend-wise. Coming next, let's chat it up with our good friend Jovan Alford. He does such great work over at Total Sports Live, along with Fansided, right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
En Walt Disney World Resort, tu familia puede sorprenderte, como tu papá, el que siempre es callado, pero aquí lo ves riendo y gritando al ver a Mickey Mouse. O tus primos, cuando pasan de decir esa no a esa sí, cuando ven Space Mountain. Y tú puedes hacer recuerdos en el lugar más mágico del mundo con las personas más mágicas que conoces. Y eso es pura magia. Crea nuevos recuerdos hoy en DisneyWorld.com.
Catch the NBA playoffs on Sling TV, the most flexible live TV streaming service, putting consumers in control to watch games their way with flexible subscriptions. Want to catch one game or a full series on ESPN? Grab a 1, 3, or 7-day pass. If you want to catch as many games as possible, get a monthly subscription with our ABC, NBC, and ESPN combo package. Either way, Sling lets you watch the playoffs your way with no long-term contracts. Learn more at sling.com.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Jovan Alford aboard. He does such great work looking at this amazing game of football, and I know that he's doing some great work with regards to the XFL, some of the spring football as well over there at Total Sports Live. Additionally, I know that he's doing some great work over at Fansided as well, covering all things Philadelphia sports, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter /X at Jovan, his first name, the number 10 altogether. Chapter. And Jovan, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
I'm doing good, Greg. Glad to be back on with you talking about baseball, the calendar. We're in April, about to get into May. So I think we're starting to see some things shape out with a lot of these teams, but always glad to be on with you.
I'm always glad to have you aboard, and what we're seeing is the Atlanta Braves currently running away with the NL East. It's been impressive what we've seen, and we'll get to them in a minute, but first things first, we have to take a look at the struggling teams. You're out there in Philadelphia, and the Phillies have lived short of expectations, but the good news for them is that they aren't the New York Mets, who had lost 12 straight games going into Wednesday. Doing this before we know whether or not they won or lost that game to go to 13 straight, but that said, what have you made of these two funks? Because, man, there were expectations for the Mets and Phillies, and boy, have they fallen short thus far.
Like you said, both of these teams, they were expected to be at the top of the division, not the Atlanta Braves. I think a lot of people were concerned about the Braves and their pitching and Strider being hurt, but for some reason, the Phillies and Mets are now battling out to see who could be the worst basement team in the NL East. I think when you look at the Phillies issue, the starting pitching haven't been great. It haven't been really consistent, really, outside of Christopher Sanchez. Aaron Nola has had his struggles. Jesus Luzardo has had his struggles. Andrew Painter, he's been solid. Taijuan Walker's been up and down to the point where the Phillies are, going to be enacting an opener, for him because his first innings have just been not great, but everything else after that has been pretty solid. But starting pitching has been an issue for this Philly squad, and also just inconsistent offense. Even when they get a solid pitching performance and they only give up 4 or 3 runs, they can't really do anything offensively. So I think that's a huge problem for the Phillies. And then when we look at the Mets, like you said, I know Phillies fans think that it's the end of the world because the Phillies aren't playing well. Well, it could be worse, right? Because like you said, the Mets have just been just that bad, and it's not good, right? I think for a lot of people, they were expecting to see Bo Bichette kind of step in and bring something to the offense. And granted, he started off slow and he's starting to pick it up as well. But you just look at the numbers for a lot of these guys, they're not performing. Francisco Lindor not hitting well, Simeon not hitting well. Robert, 243 is better than where he was, with the White Sox this time last year. But offensively, they're batting 222 as a team. You can't win that many ball games like that. And even when you look at the pitching staff, the pitching's actually been, McLean's been solid after his rocky start to the season. But the bigger issue, I think, right now is wondering, okay, Freddie Peralta, Peterson, and Kodai Senga, those guys have to figure it out, especially Freddie Peralta, because this is the guy that trading for him to be your ace, to be that front line 1-2 with McLean, and obviously, having Peterson right there. So to see Freddie not living up to probably the expectations that a lot of Mets fans have had, I think that definitely, hurts as well. It seems like both of these teams just can't seem to get out of their own way. Every time you think that they can, they just do something where you're just scratching your head saying, why?
Yeah, it has been rough to say the least. And one team has good news on Thursday with regards to their starting pitcher, and one team does not. So how about if we look at that Thursday game between the Phillies and the Cubs, and Christopher Sanchez, he's been great for the Phillies thus far this season. Sub-2 ERA. He looks like a legitimate Cy Young candidate. He goes up against Edward Cabrera, who's been good for the Cubs, and right now the Phillies are about a -125 to a -130 favorite. How do you look at both this game and Sanchez as a whole? Because I think this guy truly needs to be the stopper for the Philadelphia Phillies, and going forward to claw themselves out of this hole, they need to be winning pretty much every one of his starts.
Yeah, for sure. He's been on the unlucky side on a couple of his starts. You look at his last start against the Braves, Phillies lose 3-1, but he gave you 6 innings. He allowed 8 hits, but 3 runs that weren't earned, which is just crazy to think about. Still had 8 strikeouts. He's been getting his strikeouts, and he's been giving you consistently, last couple outings, 6 innings each, including against this same Cubs team where the Phillies, blew out the Cubs 13-7. I think it was Assad. So Assad was on the mound, and the Phillies, he took care of business there. So I'm expecting Christopher Sanchez to do Christopher Sanchez things, which is get strikeouts, go 6 innings, kind of keep this team in it, and hopefully the bats can wake up. But like you said, you're going up against a guy, Edward Cabrera, who this Phillies are very familiar with dating back to his time, with the Marlins. He's been pretty good too, man. I mean, he hasn't given up a home run, which I think is stellar through his first 4 starts. He's gone to at least 6 innings twice already beat the same Mets squad that's been struggling. He's looked really solid. Not really a lot of strikeouts like Christopher Sanchez is, but he depends on the ground ball a lot. A lot of his he has a very good string of ground ball outs in comparison to fly ball outs. So I think this is going to be a very good pitcher's duel. We could be in a situation where under maybe could be in play for this game. Maybe possibly a first five under with both of these guys are on their game and can keep both of these offensive off balance. I'm really looking forward to this matchup. I think this is really good. And, if you're a Phillies fan, you hope that they can break through against Cabrera because Christopher Sanchez, you know what you're going to get from him at the end of the day.
Yep, absolutely. Christopher Sanchez has been rock solid. The Phillies have been not any too much away from home, as well as we have Jovan Alford, who does great work over at Total Sports Live, joining me on the Baseball Betting Show. And what do you attribute that to? Because there are teams that always have demonstrative home and road splits, and for the Phillies, it just feels like year in and year out. They've got some of the biggest ones with regards to both their win-loss record and just their run production in general.
It's quite staggering because, and you know this, Greg, you follow the sport for years, you do it daily. It's staggering to think about. This offense has so many names, so much firepower that you would think that they would be able to just put runs on the board in bunches. And for some reason, it just hasn't happened. You look at what their run differential is. They're minus 45. That is the worst in the National League. That's worse than the Colorado Rockies, who are minus 20. And a lot of people think that the Rockies, right, are one of the worst teams in baseball, or you look like a team like the Chicago White Sox, a team that a lot of people thought was going to be bad. They're only minus 25, and the Phillies are at a minus 45. That's the worst in the major league. So when you look at that, you kind of wonder, okay, what's going to happen? What is not working for this team? And for me, I think they always depend on the home run ball, that big hit, and it's just you cannot do that. You have to have better approaches at the plate. That starts with Trey Turner up top. He has to be better in his plate discipline. He can't go a first pitch swinging. And I think Thompson is also, at the same token, trying to figure out who can bat cleanup right now because he's struggling trying to find out who that cleanup hitter is. One day it started the season with Alec Bohm, then Bohm struggled, and then it was Brandon Marsh. Then it went from Brandon Marsh to Adolis Garcia, and then it went to the rookie Felix Reyes, whose first major league hit was a home run. I think was off of Chris Sale, and he's been doing the cleanup duty. So I think Topper is trying to figure out, okay, how do I try to generate something with this offense? Because even the bottom of the order, it comes and goes, right? And it's very puzzling to see this team with so much firepower just not do the little things that I think we see so many other teams do well across the majors, to see what the best teams are doing across the league, right? They just don't depend on the home run. They're still in bases. They're playing station-to-station baseball. They're hitting the balls in the gap. They're doing all those things to create those offenses, not just off of just one thing. So I think that's the biggest thing, for this Phillies team right now.
Yep, I think so as well. Just being able to get a little bit more there, I think will be so beneficial for them. And with the Phillies, it has been a team that has honestly had guys like Justin Crawford and company be able to get on base, but need to be able to get a little bit more of the deep ball. And then for the Mets on Thursday, they're going to be facing off against the Twins, and this is a relatively pick'em game with Christian Scott going against Joe Ryan. And how do you look at this one? Because for the Mets, now they're trusting in Christian Scott for starts. They demoted David Peterson to the bullpen. Sean Manaea has been in a long relief role, and they're paying him a lot of money to give up runs at this point. And good news for the Mets, they got Juan Soto back, but it's just really hard to trust this team, even if they win on Wednesday, with just how bad everything has been.
It's really tough. And I feel like the Mets and the Phillies are the same way. It's like, you got to show me you can win a game first, win it inconvincingly. I know the moniker is you just take the wins how you get them, but you need to show me you can win convincingly and do it in convincing fashion. And for a Mets fan, you hope that it comes against Joe Ryan, but we know Joe Ryan. I feel like Joe Ryan is one of the more underrated pitchers in the league, to be honest. I think the way he pitches, the way he just does his thing on the mound, it's underrated. And you just look at what he's done, his last couple of starts. I mean, against a Reds team who has a lot of firepower, only gave up one earned run in 6 innings of work with 3 hits, with 3 hits allowed. Toronto, he went 7. First 2 starts earlier this month against the Royals and the Tigers, only 4 and 5 innings of work, and got roughed up, especially in that Royals game, got roughed up. But his last 2 starts against, I would say, better offenses in the Blue Jays and, in the Reds. He's performed very well. So I think the Mets are really going to have a tough battle on their hands. The same thing for them as I say, the same thing for the Phillies, The big guys got to show up, right? It's great that you have Juan Soto back, but you need the Lindors to show up. You need Bichette to show up. I mean, I know he's getting acclimated to third base and that's come with his issues this season, but he's got to give them something, as well, because this team, they don't have the big bopper in that middle of the order, in Pete Alonso anymore. Like, you have now changed kind of how you play baseball now. Not saying that they depended on the home run, but you don't have a guy in Pete Alonso anymore. So now you have to kind of find different ways to generate offense. So you hope, if you're a Mets fan, you hope that they can break through against Joe Ryan, but you're not holding your breath either, because we know, just like we said, based off of what he's done the last couple of starts, Joe Ryan's been locked in on the mound and can give the most prolific offenses, fits, and now he's going up against a struggling Mets offense that can't really get anything going, against a Twins team that no one really had expectations on coming into this season.
Absolutely. The Twins have been a pleasant surprise, and the Mets, well, they've been the exact opposite this far this season, as we've got Jovan Alford does great work over at Total Sports Live, joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And certainly we've talked about disappointments thus far, but a few teams have surprised a little bit more to the pleasant side, and maybe you've been able to find a little bit of value on them here early in the season.
The teams that I think have been very surprising to me, I know this might be okay, we get it. Like, we know this team already. The A's, I think, have been surprising just because offensively they know how to score. But I think even just pitching wise, they've gotten, some pretty good, got some pretty good starts, from a couple of their starters, specifically Jeffrey Springs. I think Springs has just been tremendous this season. I know he didn't pitch well in his last start. I forgot who it was with. I think it was against the White Sox. He didn't pitch well, but his previous starts before then, he was really good. His start against the Yankees earlier this month was just electric. I think he had a no-hitter going against them, I think, in deep into the 6th or 7th inning. So I've been impressed with this A's team, and we'll see if they keep it going, because right now that AL West looking very competitive, right now. And I think another team that's been kind of surprising to me is the Arizona Diamondbacks. I know 13-10 doesn't sound very exciting, but I like the way that their pitching staff has been pitching, specifically a guy in, Mike Soroka. He's been tremendous, and I think he gets to start on Thursday. 4-0, 2.78 ERA. He's been really good, and we all remember, what he was early in his career, how he's pitching early in his career, and, he had some struggles, Atlanta and Chicago and the Nationals, just bouncing around. And he seemingly has figured it out. And I think he pitched in the World Baseball Classic, and I thought he looked really good there, as well. So to see him, kind of come out and kind of reestablish himself in a rotation that, have the guys like the Merrill Kellys, and, it has the Zach Gollins, and, it have the Eduardo Rodriguez, who's been pretty good as well to start the year. Diamondbacks could be a very interesting team in that NL West, which is looking pretty competitive too. The Padres 16-7, Dodgers same record as them. That could be there's no reason why we can't see potentially 3 teams come out the NL West this year, because you look at the NL East, where I think a lot of people thought that you could see the 3 teams in. It's really the Braves and everybody else. I don't think people expect the Marlins to hang around or the Nationals to hang around. They hope that, maybe the Phillies or the Mets will wake up. But like we just mentioned, there will be the Padres. There'll be the Diamondbacks. There'll be the Cubs, the Brewers, the Reds, the Cardinals, even with how they're playing with, Jordan Walker and, JJ Weatherholt. There will be teams in that wild card mix that are going to, really make things tough for other teams. And I think the NL West, if they don't completely beat each other up, right, I think we could see a spot where maybe 3 teams come out of that division for the playoffs.
No doubt about it. And I know that you were talking about the Diamondbacks and liking them against the Chicago White Sox on Thursday. Any other games for this Thursday really catching your eye, albeit a little bit of a smaller slate here on this Thursday?
Yeah, a little bit, like you said, a little bit of smaller slate. But like you said, I'm definitely looking at that matchup. I'm also looking at a matchup between the Detroit Tigers and the Milwaukee Brewers. We got Tariq Skubal on the mound against Brandon Sprout. Sprout hasn't been great. Actually, haven't even gone 4 innings in his first three starts, but sort of kind of got it back together against the Blue Jays. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do against this Tigers club, which I think a lot of people think have kind of underachieved a little bit, especially with how they ended last season and how they formed in the playoffs. I think a lot of people had expectations that they would be sitting at the top of that division, but I think they could get back on track here with Tariq Skubal, who's just he's good. And the Tigers have won his last 2 starts, and he's only given up 2 earned runs in his last 2 starts with 17 strikeouts. Like, that's how dominant this guy is. So I'm definitely looking at this spot here for the Tigers, potentially a money line situation, straight up depending on what the price is, or looking at maybe a F5 situation as well, because if Skubal's on his game like he's been the last couple of outings, then I think that we could, be in good shape here if you want to back the Tigers on that first 5, money line, on even on that run line, depending on, how things shape out.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think that the Tigers going to do a nice job getting into Sprout and get the job done there, just like you always get the job done, Jovan. You do such great work over at Total Sports Live, Fansided, and so much more. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, for sure. Always appreciate you having me on, Greg. People can follow me on Twitter at Jovan10. Same thing over at Blue Sky. And then, like you said, TotalSportsLive.com. UFL season's going on. NFL draft is starting. So that should be fun to see what the Eagles do. We'll have some stuff up on the site. Whatever the Eagles do over these next few days. So we still got the Sixers, and obviously the Phillies are being the Phillies. So there's a lot happening. But yeah, check out TotalSportsLive.com.
Absolutely. Jovan, every single time he joins me, lends such great insights and did so once again today. A big thanks to Jovan for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Thursday as we touch them all.
En Walt Disney World Resort, tu familia puede sorprenderte, como tu papá, el que siempre es callado, pero aquí lo ves riendo y gritando al ver a Mickey Mouse. O tus primos, cuando pasan de decir esa no a esa sí, cuando ven Space Mountain. Y tú puedes hacer recuerdos en el lugar más mágico del mundo con las personas más mágicas que conoces. Y eso es pura magia. Crea nuevos recuerdos hoy en DisneyWorld.com.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to be joined by our good friend Tristan Freeman. He does such amazing work over at Bustin' Brackets, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So a big thanks to Tristan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. You got some pop here with Oklahoma. Pop Isaacs, he has decided to commit with them last season over at Texas A&M. In SEC play, he was shooting in the high 30s from three-point range, about 9.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. Took him a little bit of time to be able to find his sea legs, looked much more comfortable towards the back half of the season. Oklahoma's going to need to add a little bit more size. They've got Kanani Ruths coming over from Louisville, Tyler Hendricks, nice 6'6" combo player from Utah Valley, but certainly they've done a nice job in terms of revamping that backcourt. They obviously lose Xavier Brown. They also lose Nigel Pack from a season ago, but they've done a good job in terms of adding guards. We all know what Porter Mosher is able to do with those guys, so I do like this ad for them. Again, hopefully they are not quite done yet, but I do think that that's a pretty solid pickup for them, and it's very clear that they're going to be looking to go very guard heavy for this upcoming season. Baylor's starting to get on the board with some moves. Isaac Salazar, he last season was playing over at Yale, and rock solid player, 13 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. He has decided that he is going to be heading on over with the Bears. For Baylor, they were not necessarily the world's greatest offensive team last year, but they were rock solid on offense, and for Yale, this was one of the more efficient mid-major offenses in all of college basketball. Salazar probably leaves a little bit of something to be desired on defense, and that's much of what Baylor has picked up. Caden Mingo was a part of a Penn State team that was pretty efficient on offense, very inefficient on defense. Brett Decker Jr., amazing three-point shooter over at Liberty, again, left us something to be desired on the defensive side of things. And Salazar at 6'6" was able to shoot about 40.5% from three-point range, so you've got that going for you. Baylor, it looks like they're going to be looking to outscore teams for this upcoming season. They're certainly having a type of guy in mind, so there's that aspect of things in terms of going all offense and no defense whatsoever. So we'll see if that's going to be able to pan out for Oregon. They've really hit the transfer portal hard here in the offseason. Taylor Bowen, he last season was over at Alabama, 6.5 points, a little bit over 4 rebounds per game. He commits with the program. Obviously, it's a little bit of a changeover for Oregon. I believe that Nate Biddle is officially out of eligibility. Obviously, they lose Jackson Shellsad in the offseason, but in a program that they really built themselves in the transfer portal about a decade or so ago. They made some nice moves. Jasper Johnson is a former top 30 recruit coming over from Kentucky, and then you've got ancillary guys like Andrew Meadow was solid over at Boise State, but now he's stepping up a level. Tyron Riley last season over at San Francisco was a 10-point per game guy. Farrell Compton, he's not going to light the world on fire with his offense, but he's going to be help out a defense that just was below standard last season. So I do like the range of guys that they've got here in general. Bo Bowen is a guy that at 6'10" is also able to pop it and lock it from 3-point range as well. Some relatively good versatility there. And overall, some solid moves made by Oregon here in the offseason. You got this piece of news for someone that's actually returning. Caleb Foster is going to be back at Duke. He's going to team up with John Blackwell in the backcourt. You saw Ben Skronowski come on over from Belmont as well, and you already saw Patrick Ngangba down low as well. So for Duke, they've got a nice recruiting class coming in. They've got a few starters from last year's team that are going to be back with the program as well. It's going to be a nice blend for this team, and I think that they're building it the right way. They've went into the transfer portal for a big-time add in John Blackwell, 19-point per game guy over at Wisconsin, but they're having some camaraderie with that program as well. I really think they've done it right here in the offseason. Let's see if that actually yields some fruit. Anton Bonke, he last season was over at Charlotte, 10.5 points, 8 boards, shot 34% from 3 at 7'2". He has decided that he is going to be adding on over to Michigan State. As you know, Michigan State is not necessarily the program that has 100 billion guys via the transfer portal line. This is the first time that they've gotten up on the board here in the offseason, but a rock solid ad. Obviously, they lose Jeremy Fears here in the offseason. They're going to be having some mixing and shaking in general, but I think that this is a good starting spot for them. I think that he's going to be able to fit the system, give them a little bit of versatility. We'll see who all returns, and we'll see if they can add someone else, because if they had nobody else, then I think that they're going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit, but that's a good first move to be able to get them up on the board. No shock here, Darius Acuff declared for the NBA draft. He is as good as gone. We talked a little bit about Arkansas in the last segment with our good friend Tristan Freeman, so figured I would pass that along. And how about Cincinnati just continuing their great offseason? Tylan Riley, he last season was over at Tulsa, 15 points, 4 boards, 4.4 assists per contest, a nice 3-point shooter as he bombed it at about 39%. He has decided that he is going to be on to Cincinnati, and for Cincinnati, you have to love the fact that they picked up Jared Calhoun here in the offseason, so they're getting back to their Coach Bob Huggins roots. Additionally, he was able to bring with him a few ancillary guys from Utah State. He didn't bring with him any of the big guys, but a few of the guys that were like redshirting, like David Awazi, are going to be coming over. Elijah Perryman is coming over as well, and then it's sort of like mid-major all-stars at this point. Travion Kaysen from North Dakota State. Miles Colvin, obviously not a mid-major all-star. He comes over from Wake Forest, but Riley Allen Patch, 6'11", he's got some versatility. I think that Cincinnati right away is going to be a rock-solid team. Would like to see them maybe add 1 or 2 more power conference guys, but overall, I think that they're doing a nice job. I do think that Jared Calhoun is going to be able to instill a system right away and have some success in doing so. And then for Texas A&M, while they lost Pop Isaacs on Wednesday, they did pick up Jalen Reese. He last season was averaging about 6 points, 3.5 assists per contest over at LSU. Certainly not a guy that's going to go out there and light the world on fire in terms of just putting the ball in the basket, but a former top 100 recruit that's going to be able to dole out the ball. This is sort of a Texas A&M sort of guy. Texas A&M last year holds greater than some of its parts. You do pick up PJ Haggerty, and I wonder what sort of an ad that's going to be, because wherever Haggerty has gone, he's been sort of that, for lack of a better term, black hole where the ball goes to him and it doesn't necessarily come back out. Luka Wells, he comes over from Radford. He's probably not going to give you a ton, but Cade Phillips is going to be able to help out this team on defense as well. So I'm not sure how everything works with Haggerty, but I do like the fact that they pick up a facilitator. I think that this is a relatively solid ad for them, and then I think that this one is solid as well. Jalen Cox, he was Mr. Do-It-All over at Colgate this last year. 18 points, 5.2 boards, 5.5 assists, relatively solid 3-point shooter. He heads on over to USC. USC hasn't had quite as much, shall we say, quantity in terms of transfers. This is transfer number 3, but the quality has been there. KJ Lewis was a nice double-figure scorer over at Georgetown and Arizona. Eric Rebe, former top 50 recruit, rock-solid 7-footer from UConn. Now you add in there a guy in Cox who's able to stuff the stat sheet, was at a little bit of a lower level, but I think that he should be able to fit in with this program really well. I feel like Eric Musselman is getting it right. They don't need to pick up necessarily 100 million guys, because Rodney Rice is going to be with the team for this upcoming season. So far it's been a good offseason for them. Like these moves that they're making thus far. We'll see if they're going to be able to make any more, but I think that they're actually doing things right here in the offseason because they're not necessarily going for the quantity of moves. They're going a little bit more for the quality. And then when it comes to this move, I think that this is a solid one. UMKC, aka Kansas City, they're adding in their Sebastian Hartman. They finally get up on the board, and for UMKC, they were just so miserable against the spread last season. And Hartman, he was limited to just 7 games, so it was a small sample size from last year. In that small sample size, was averaging about 7 points, 5 boards, shot 43.5% from 3, career about 33% 3-point shooter at 6'5". UMKC has just lacked offense for the longest of time. He was a starter over at Eastern Washington 2 years ago. He was averaging about 9.5 points, 4 boards, shot about 36% from 3-point. So a little bit of an interchangeable guy. Certainly they're going to need to add more from here, but that's a good first pickup for them. And then for Kent State, they've been a little bit silent here in the transfer portal. Latif Diop coming over as well from Chattanooga, and then Godslov Nwabe, who comes over from Eastern Michigan, were their main 2 ads to start out with. Now they pick up Cameron Williams. He was over at Portland this last season, and he was a solid player over at Portland. 10.5 points, 4.5 boards, at 6'8", was able to pop it from 3 a little bit, only shot 27% from 3. For Kent State, they took a lot of steps back on defense this last season. I'm not going to lie to you. So they're going to need to be able to reinstill that, and picking up someone from Portland probably not going to be necessarily what you're going to need to be able to get the job done there. That said, he is going to be able to give this team some nice stretchability. I think that his active hands, as I do think that he's going to be able to fit a system that when they've been in full form, they've been able to do a nice job in terms of generating turnovers. I think that he's going to be able to help out with that regard, and I do think that that is going to be very solid for this program. And then I think that this one is solid as well. Michael Aaron McNair, he last season was over at Boston U. He has decided that he is going to be going to Maryland, and they've had some nice pickups. Robert Jennings, the second, coming over from Oklahoma State. Bishop Boswell from Tennessee. DJ Turnip Wagner, he was over at Arkansas this last season. Now they get a guy who's just able to light it up from 3-point range. For Aaron McNair, last season with Boston U, he was their main scorer with 17 points, 5 boards, shot 44% from 3-point range. This is a Maryland team that it feels like is going to be very versatile, well-rounded, and I like this pickup for them. Idaho is at last on the board. Kasi Wynot. He was playing over at Washington State and is a native of the great state of Idaho. It was a very small sample size of 5 games, but he was averaging 4 points and shot 40% from 3-point. For his career, was only averaging about 2 points per contest over at Washington State, but 6'6", a little bit of a combo player that's able to pop it from 3. For Idaho, this is a solid pickup, and they do have some nice pieces returning from the season ago. They do lose Jackson Rasmussen, so they're going to need to do a little bit more here in the portal, but I do like this for them. For Akron, I feel like they made some solid moves thus far. Obviously, they lose John Gross from a season ago, but now they're going to be adding in their Ty Pence, who last year, he supplied for the team 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, shot 36% from 3 at 6'6", and for Illinois State last season, they were a really good defensive team. For Akron, they've already added in their Max Burton from the MAC, who he was able to be a nice double-figure scorer at 6'10". For Western Michigan's Taj Savetsky, who was a double-figure scorer over at Incarnate Word. Colin White didn't see a lot of minutes over at Ohio State, and Xavier Wilson didn't see a ton of minutes over at Kansas State, but these are nice upside guys. I like what they've done here in the offseason, and I feel like they've been able to have themselves some relatively nice gets. For Arkansas, it's been a little bit slow going for them. Their main guy that they picked up was Cooper Bowser, but Jeremiah Wilkerson, 16-point per game score over at Georgia last season and was a mid-33-point shooter. I think that that's big for them. They're currently dealing with a few question marks in terms of the NBA draft. Obviously, Darius Acuff, he declared, but Malik Thomas, if they're able to get him back, they're going to be really looking at a bit of something, so they're waiting on that piece of news. But so far, I do think that they are putting themselves in relatively okay footing. I think that they're probably going to need to add a little bit more down low because they had themselves a rough time of it last season down low. But that said, I do think that there are some pickups to be had here, but backcourt is still looking relatively solid, about as solid as it gets when you lose someone like a Darius Acuff. And when it comes to Cal, they're adding in there another Georgia transfer, as they already brought in their Jake Wilson. Now they bring in their Jordan Ross. He was over with the team last season, and he was lost in the shadows, ironically enough, in terms of guys like Jeremiah Wilkerson and company, but 6.5 points, 2.5 assists, began his career over at St. Mary's, and when he was over at St. Mary's, wasn't like some sort of a go-to scorer or anything like that, but was a guy that would play good, solid defense for Cal. They were a team that last year was a little bit lackadaisical on the defensive side of things, wasn't a team that generated a lot of turnovers. I think that he's going to be able to give them a little bit of boost on that front, so this is a nice pickup for them. And how about Wes Miller bringing over more guys from Cincinnati? He already got Jizzle James. Now, these two guys aren't necessarily the biggest guys, but Kashawn Tillery is going to be coming with them, along with Tyler McKinley. With McKinley, he's a guy that stands right around about 6'8", wasn't necessarily just lighting the world on fire down low, but he's a former top top 100 recruit as a freshman last year, was averaging a little bit over 2 rebounds per game. When you've got Bob Miller and company, it's hard to be able to get out there on the floor, but they get him in. And then with Tillery, he was a former top 100 recruit of the class of 2025, was doling out about 2 assists per game. Again, he was lost in the shadow of Kirk Kriisa early on during the season, then more like Day Thomas and company towards the back half of the season, but is a guy that has some upside as a little bit more of a primary facilitator, but was able to shoot 33% from 3-point range last season. And they add to that Dylan Grant as well. With Grant, he was one of the main guys for Rutgers this last season. Granted, it was a down Rutgers team, but 9.5 points per game at 6'7", popped it at about 30.5% from 3. With Rutgers, relatively slow, controlled team. I think that Wes Miller is going to be trying to get back to where things were a few seasons ago with regards to this program, at the very least the program that he was running at Cincinnati, where they were playing a little bit more defense-oriented, a little bit more slow. Felt like they got a little bit too fast for their own good last season over at Cincinnati, reeled ice at midseason, and they were able to be a much more respectable team after that point. So I think that he's going to try to instill that over at Cincinnati, and I think that it's going to lead to a pretty nice season for them. It's been a little bit of a silent offseason for Georgia State thus far, but now they pick up a pair of guys that, like Jacob Meyer is going to be coming on over from UAB, and then you've got David Thomas. For Georgia State, they did can Jonas Hayes in the offseason, so they're going through a little bit of a coaching change, but for Thomas, he's someone that has bounced all around, began his career over at Mercer, where he was a double-figure scorer. Last 2 years at DePaul and Richmond, averaged about 4 points per game. Is a career about 38%, 3-point shooter, a guy that when he was at Mercer was doling out about 2.5 assists per game, so he's got the ability to be able to handle at the point guard spot. And then with Jacob Meyer, he was a solid player when he was over at Coastal Carolina a few seasons ago, a guy that has just bounced around a little bit in general. Last year over at UAB, 12.5 points, shot about 31.5% from 3-point range, and I think that he's going to be able to do a nice job with this program. Keep in mind, he's another guy that was over at DePaul 2 seasons ago. He was a part-time starter for them, was able to average about 9 points per game. More of his facilitating came when he was over at Coastal Carolina a few seasons ago, when he was averaging about 2.5 assists per game for them. And when it comes to Georgia State, I feel like they are starting to get it right with John Cremens, who was a longtime assistant. He's now going to get the role as a head coach, and I think that for Cremens, just being able to have that, shall we say, pedigree, being able to have worked for as many programs as he did, most notably with Vanderbilt this last season, I think that he's going to step in right away and be able to elevate this Georgia State program that clearly has some resources. They maybe weren't allocating them the absolute rightest of right ways, but I do think that just the overall ability for them to be able to go out there, get some guys like they've already done this offseason, it leads to things being on the up and up for them. Someone who left the Georgia State program in Joe Chappelle last season was one of their main rebounders. 7.5 points, 5.3 rebounds. At 6'8", actually shot 37.8% from 3-point range. He commits to Indiana State. Good versatility for them. Indiana State, in the, shall we say, post-Josh Schertz era, really built around 3-point shooting. They're a team that likes to go up-tempo. I think that this is a nice add for them. They need to cut down on the turnovers, and I'm not sure if McGuire Mitchell comes over from IU Indy is going to be all up with that, but he should be able to give them a little bit more 3-point shooting as well. This last year, 12 points per game, shot 35% from 3 for an IU Indy team that they were playing that just absolutely harebrained, insane style where they were looking to generate turnovers like their life depended on it, and they were very much gambling for those turnovers. So going to be interesting to see if he fits in with this Indiana State system. For the Sycamores, they actually did a really nice job in terms of guarding the 3-point line last season. Very weak down low. They're going to need to add a little bit more of a big man because they don't have that, but both of these guys 6'5" or taller, so they're going to be able to have a little bit of versatility there, and I do think that they've been able to do some nice early moves here, but would like to see a little bit more, especially on the defensive side of things. Jake Bogreth, he began his career over at Iona last year at Gardner-Webb for a team that was not great to say the least. He was solid at 6'9", gave the team 10.5 points, 7.1 boards. He actually shot 40% from 3, albeit small sample size of 15 threes, but he has decided that he's going to be heading on over to James Madison. James Madison is a pretty slow and controlled team that typically, when things are going well under Preston Spradlin, the defense is solid. They bring in Gage Lattimore from NC Central, is able to generate turnovers. KJ Wyndham and Garrett Sandra are a pair of guys that come over from the power conference level, and Sandra should be able to give them something down low at about 6'10" or so. I do think that they've got themselves a nice little nucleus here. I do think that Spradlin is going to be able to have a little bit of a nice bounce back season. After last year, things were, shall we call it, a little bit less than savory for them, but I do think that Hogreth, a nice solid pickup here. A diamond in the rough from a team that, again, they just weren't great as a team, but I thought that he individually was pretty solid, and I think that this is going to be a good fit for them. I think that this is a nice pickup as well for McNeese. They've done a really good job here in the offseason. They picked up the likes of an Elijah Moore coming over from Utah. They've got Jalen Dean Vines, who's coming over from Vanderbilt. They keep Larry Johnson, and now they bring in Florida State's Alir Mulak, who last year he was only giving you about 2.2 rebounds per game as a true 7-footer. He just really didn't fit the Luke Locke system, but for McNeese, it was a really good defensive team last season. Don't know if he's going to be able to fit their ability to be able to generate turnovers, but it was a McNeese team that was having a little bit of a tough time on the glass. They gave up a lot of second and third chances. This should be able to help them out in a big way there, so I think that that is a really good pickup for them, and I think that McNeese, once again, getting it right. Very clear that this team has money to spend, and it's very, very clear that they are not afraid to spend it, which you absolutely love to see that, especially from a major program. For Nevada, they pick up Cedric Lath. He last season was over at Houston, 6'10" big man. He was relatively highly recruited, but just didn't see playing time because he was lost in the shadow of guys like Joseph Tugler and company. He was a guy that went to Liberty of Nevada, so he is familiar with the state, and at 6'9", he should be able to give the team a little bit of thunder down low. He stands over 250 pounds, so this is not a guy that's really going to be going out there, give you versatility, popping it from three, but with Steve Alford, he's really slowed down his system over the last few seasons. I think that he's going to be able to do a good job in terms of fitting that, and we'll see if this is going to be a fit with Mr. Mike Malone as Maxim Logue. He was over at Florida Atlantic last season, averaged 5 points per game, and he has decided that he is going to be going to North Carolina. I can't think that he's going to be seeing good minutes for North Carolina. Like, if he is, you just let me know. This just feels like it's a little bit more of a depth piece, a way to be able to get a little bit more experience on the roster, and if that's the case, yay verily to them. That said, if they're having many expectations for them whatsoever, I will question why they gave Mike Malone that much money and then they decided to spend money on Maxim Logue. And then for Elijah Elliott, he last season was over at Ohio, had his season cut short due to injury, played in just 13 games where he was averaging 4 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. Previous year as a freshman, shot about 39% from three, albeit it was on a relatively small sample size, but he has decided that he's going to be heading on over to North Florida. We talked about this with our good friend Avetta Aberman last week. It is appearing that North Florida is content to spend a little bit more money. Was very surprised that they stuck with the interim coaching regime from a season ago, but they're looking to be able to put a bit of money into the program. They are a program that just in general, you go back to the Matthew Driscoll days, they're always loving to bomb it from three-point range. It looks like they're going to be doing a lot more of that this season, and I do think that he could be a good fit with the system. I love this one for Notre Dame. Braden Smith, he began his career over at Colgate. He redshirted a year this past year over at Gonzaga. He wasn't like some lightning rod scorer, but 5 points, 3.5 assists per game. He heads on over to Notre Dame. For Notre Dame, they pick up Logan Duncombe. He's going to take over that Carson Tout role in terms of doing the dirty work. Down low, Ethan Roberts was a nice go-to scorer over at Penn this last season. Notre Dame are finding guys to be able to fit the system. They either want guys that just absolutely go bombs away from three-point range or guys that are going to be able to clean up the glass. They've been able to do a nice job in terms of mixing and matching here in the portal thus far, and they haven't necessarily added like a whole bunch of different guys or anything like that, and they do lose the likes of Marcus Burton, Jalen Harrelson, but I think that they've done a good job in terms of rebuilding from that, and I love this one for them. Christian Brown, he last season was over at James Madison. He averaged 3 points and 4 rebounds per game, and he's decided to go to Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss has made some nice moves. Roman Sapula coming over from Pittsburgh, 6'6" combo player. Adam Clark, he was Mr. Do-It-All over at Seton Hall, was really good at generating turnovers over at Merrimack. Andy Okafor, I think that he can stretch the floor. If they're giving Christian Brown meaningful minutes, that's not a place where they necessarily want to be. If this is once again one of those walk-on situations, be a good locker room, brouhaha guy and everything like that, okay, that'll be able to work out for them. If they are thinking that this is going to be taking them to the promised land, I don't think that that's going to be very promising. Tim Oba, he last season was over at Buffalo. He has decided that he is going to be adding on over to Penn State. Penn State needs any sort of a post presence whatsoever. They were terrible on the glass. Oba probably not the answer. 8.5 points, 5 rebounds per game for a Buffalo team that they themselves left a lot to be desired defensively. Not a guy that is really going to go bombs away from three, but he is 6'11". He was able to average a block and a half per contest. And keep in mind, Yannick Conan Niederhauser, when he came on over from Northern Illinois many years ago and became a really nice impact guy for Penn State, it's not like he had the world's greatest numbers as well. So is there some upside here? Yes. Are they probably going to need to add a little bit more down low? I think absolutely, but at the very least, they are addressing things down low because, man, it was not great for them last season, and I do think that this is going to be able to help them out quite a bit. How about some help for our good friends over there at Rhode Island? Dylan Williamson, he was one of the main men over at Towson this last season. Obviously, a slow and control program. Rhode Island, they were playing very slowly this last year. 14.5 points, 3.5 assists, shot 34% from three, career 37% three-point shooter. He heads on over to Rhode Island. I think that this is actually a really nice pickup for them, and I think that he's going to be able to be an instant fit with this system. I think they identified a guy that could come in right away, be able to know sort of the, shall we say, fundamentals of what they're looking to do. He's going to be able to do so. Great pickup for them, so I love this one. And then T.O. Barrett, he is going to be staying in the SEC. Last season over at Missouri, had some flashes towards the back half of the season. At 6'4", he's a career 19.5% three-point shooter. He heads on over to Vanderbilt. Looking like Vanderbilt probably not going to be the same three-point shooting team that they were a season ago. They do pick up ace break glass in case of emergency from Washington State, Sebastian Williams-Adams. Barrett, he's more of a, shall we say, driver, I think is the best way of putting it. Vanderbilt, obviously, they lose so many guys from a season ago in that backcourt, so I do think that you're going to see a different new-look team, but at the same time, we have seen in the past, going all the way back to his time over at Georgia Southern, along with James Madison, Mark Byington do a really good job with a whole bunch of different roles, and a lot of people think Mark Byington's style all about turnovers, great guard play, what have you, but he's been able to give different looks in different seasons. He's able to adapt to his guys. He certainly, I think, is going to need to do so this season, but I think that he's going to be able to do a solid job of doing so, so I think that he's got himself a little bit of a different roster for this upcoming season, but I do think that he's going to be able to find a way to make it work, and it appears as though they're going to be a little bit more, shall we say, content to be able to get to the basket, and they're going to be a little bit stronger down low this season than they were a season ago. For Tulane, they get on the board with transfer number 2. They added TJ Nudu about 24 to 48 hours ago. Nice three-point shooter that comes over from Detroit, average double figures last season. Now they bring in Christian Lewis. Was a part of a Louisiana Monroe team that wasn't great, but this guy was able to average 18.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists at 6'3", shot about 31.5% from three-point. In conference play was averaging 19.5 points per game for Tulane. When the team is at peak form, they're able to really go bombs away from three, and they're looking to play up tempo, and Monroe was a team that pushed quite a bit of tempo. Now they're going to need more depth. I have been saying this for years. It is a Tulane team that has not had enough depth for what they're trying to do, but that said, if they can sign a few more guys, they now have 2 nice go-to scorers already on the roster from a lower level. I think that this can work out for them. Zion Stanford, things did not work out for him last year over at Villanova. He was averaging only about 1.5 points per contest. He decides that he's going to go back down to the lower level, and he's going to join Towson. I think that this is a great pickup for them. I think that he's going to be very rock solid in terms of his defense. When he was over at Temple 2 seasons ago, 13 points, 4.5 boards, pair of assists per contest, shot 35% from 3-point, so he's able to stuff the stat sheet at 6'5". He's able to guard multiple positions, so I think that this is a very good system fit for them. For Towson, obviously, they lose the likes of a Dylan Williamson and company, but this is a good starting spot in terms of being able to get back to where they want to be. And then for Tarleton State, they already picked up Caleb Blackwell, a guy that very much fits the system coming over from UTEP, and now they pick up Isaac Harrell, who was over at Elon this last season, and Frank Emu. Hopefully I got that correct. With Emu, he last season was playing over at Texas State, and it's a Texas State program that they themselves were one of the best in terms of generating turnovers last year, just like Tarleton always does now, moving away from Billy Gillespie, but it appears as though they're going to stay true to their roots. And for Emu, he was a primary, shall we say, sixth man for Texas State this last year. He was able to give the team 7 points and shot 42% from 3 at 6'5", and he was an All-America East rookie player over at UMBC a few seasons ago as well. I like that move. And then Isaac Harrell, he over at Elon, was able to shoot about 36% from 3, 7.5 points per game. Not necessarily a guy that fits on the defensive side of things, but they do upgrade their 3-point shooting at Tarleton. They've had a tough time with regards to being able to develop good, clean offense over the last few seasons. This should be able to help them do so a little bit better. So I do think that these moves are going to be able to really be able to give this team a little bit of a fresh start, for lack of a better term, for Stetson. They already retained Colin Kuhl, one of their top scorers from a season ago, and now they pick up Magnus Entman. He last season was playing over at Kent State. Didn't see a lot of playing time at 6'9", 3 points, 2.5 rebounds per game. It's very clear that Stetson needs to be a little bit better on the defensive side of things. They've been one of the worst teams in all of college basketball there, and they were really just getting plowed on the glass last season. He's going to be able to add a little bit of size. Certainly is going to be a project player, as he just didn't see a lot of minutes over the last few seasons, but still a guy that is going to be able to give them a bigger body, and I do think that that's something that has the potential to be able to work out for South Dakota. They pick up Josh Townley Thomas. He was over at Creighton this last season, and he's someone that really didn't see a lot of minutes in general for the team, but I feel like he could be a little bit of a nice upside piece at 6'10". They are looking to be able to be a little bit better down low. They were able to do a nice job with Cameron Fenns last season. They had him along KJ Thomas, who comes over from UTEP. Cade Kyerman, he was over at Iowa State last season. Really didn't see any minutes whatsoever when he was over at Iowa State, but hey, he was at Iowa State last season. I do think that they've done a nice job in terms of adding some small pieces that could be able to make a little bit of a difference for them. So I do think that they're off to a nice start here. They were able to retain a few guys from the season as well. So all in all, relatively good start for them. And then Rice, we give our to Lane Kiffin go Owls. They had a pair of guys, Sean Blake, who was over at Vermont, and then Jarne Aluna Inage. Hopefully I got that correct. And with our man whose last name is very hard to pronounce, comes over from Charlotte last year, 3.5 points, 3 boards, shot just 56.5% at the free throw line, but they're not going to be looking at him to necessarily be able to really elevate and pop it from 3. He's a guy that stands right around about 6'9", 6'10" for Rice. They had a very difficult time down low, and they had some relatively good guard play. He should be able to help out there. And then for Sean Blake, he was averaging 4 assists, 4 boards, 7 points per game for a Vermont team that was one of the best in terms of not allowing second and third chances in all of college basketball. Was a little bit of a weak 3-point shooting defense, but he should be able to help out a Rice team that was hit or miss from the outside as well. He was shooting about 35% from 3-point range, plays at a slow and controlled style, and with these two adds being guys that played in very slow systems, it appears as though Rice might be looking to tone down that tempo a little bit. So we'll see what they're doing moving forward, and we're going to be continuing to check in on all these offseason moves and what these teams are doing in general. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GUNET_81. Keep in mind, letters DM, they mean does not matter. So per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. A big thanks once again to Tristan Freeman of Boston Brackets for joining me in the last segment. And I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. And once we get back in season picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So I'll come at you once again tomorrow as well. Thank you.
En Walt Disney World Resort, tu familia te sorprende, como tu papá cuando lo ves riendo y gritando en Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Encuentra ese momento de pura magia en Walt Disney World Resort. Visita disneyworld.com.